Hi, I'm Paul Dietrich, and I'm the Chief Investment Strategist for B. Riley Wealth Management. And I wanted to talk a little bit today about what was America trying to tell us in this last election. You know, for the past 3 days, I've been poring over nearly 475 pages of detailed exit polling data from the election. And in the end, President-elect Biden will have won the election by about 5 million popular votes and 306 electoral votes. That's the same number of electoral votes that President Trump won against Hillary Clinton. Trump then, at that time, he described those 306 electoral votes as a landslide victory. Biden received about 79 million votes in this election, almost 14 million more than the 65.8 million received by Clinton. This was the highest vote count for any candidate in American history. But this election was hardly a complete repudiation for Trump. He received almost 10 million more votes than he received in the 2016 election. You know, at 73.2 million votes, he received the second highest vote count for any candidate in American history. Like everyone else, I've been trying to make some sense of what the American people were trying to say in this election. It seems so clear to me that there are two Americas and they are fundamentally deeply divided. But this election, it gave me some hope. If you look at the returns carefully in those battleground states, which by definition are the most divided because the results were so close, you will see that there are still a few moderates left in America. In many of these battleground states, you saw a significant, if small, percentage of voters chose Joe Biden for president and then voted for a Republican for the Senate and House. That was particularly evident in Georgia. You know, this is why the Senate will most likely remain Republican, but with just a 1 or 2 seat majority. The Republicans currently have 50 seats in the Senate, and then there are these 2 seats in Georgia that will be decided on January 5th. We also saw Republicans pick up a surprising number of House seats that no polls predicted. Republicans also picked up state houses and state legislative seats. I think the American people were trying to send a message to Washington, D.C. that, you know, perhaps the press has missed a bit. If you look at the exit poll data, it seems to indicate a large percentage of voters liked many of Trump's policies on taxes, regulatory reform, and judicial nominees. But if you look carefully at the open-ended questions that these exit polls ask, you know, even diehard Trump supporters admitted that they were fed up and embarrassed by his tweets, his lies, and, you know, his often lewd and crude and erratic behavior. I mean, most people, if they're honest, you know, say they would prefer that he didn't do any of that stuff. The exit polling shows this was a clear referendum on the person and personality of President Trump. This was not, as many Democrats and the progressive left in the United States wanted to think of, as a policy election. Most voters of both parties seem to believe that, you know, Joe Biden was a decent man, and they also said he more represented how we like to see ourselves and our president as a nation and as Americans in the world. But according to the exit polls, voters of both parties were just exhausted by Trump and embarrassed at how the rest of the world kind of viewed us as a nation. But in terms of policy, it was clear that this election was a repudiation primarily of the policies of the progressive left. The vast majority of voters stated they opposed socialism and emphatically did not want to become a socialist nation. Most Americans still strongly support capitalism, free markets, and free trade according to the exit polls. Voters also said they believe in a competent and effective federal government, but a limited government that doesn't go too far. Most voters also said they were against raising taxes and believed that tax increases right now could kind of kneecap this current economic recovery and destroy more jobs than they create. Voters also seem to completely reject any suggestion of defunding the police. In general, voters believe in climate change and they are in favor of cleaner fuels like solar and wind power. However, they are clearly unwilling to sacrifice fossil fuels and the jobs they create for a more expansive and tax-subsidized plan like the Green New Deal. It was also clear that voters did not want socialized medicine, but most said they supported and believed Congress could come up with a free market solution to provide health care to the uninsured and make sure pre-existing conditions were covered for everyone. I think in the end, with their votes for Biden as president and a likely Republican-controlled Senate, I kind of believe the American people were telling President-elect Biden, look, we like you, we think you're a nice guy, a decent human being, but we're not going to be making a sharp left turn in terms of public policy. And we're going to keep you on a short leash. And guess what? Mitch McConnell is going to be your dog walker. It seems clear from the stock market's reaction to the election over the past few days that everyone, at least on Wall Street, loves divided government. With a Republican Senate, and I believe that's what in the end we will have, I think with that divided government, we can expect in the first 2 years of a Biden administration, no higher taxes that would slow down the economic recovery, no Medicare for all, no court packing, no Green New Deal, no defunding the police, no anti-Second Amendment gun legislation, no getting rid of coal, oil, natural gas, or fracking. And even Biden recognizes this. His transition staff has said that the new administration will be solely focused on 3 goals in the first year. One is to create a national plan to fight the coronavirus pandemic and drive down new infections. That will be goal number 1. Goal number 2 is to create a national plan to quickly distribute the first approved, safe, and effective vaccines so they can be available to everyone through your local Walgreens or CVS, and to encourage at least 60% of the nation to get vaccinated. And the third and probably most important goal is to provide a significant stimulus package for small businesses, hospitals, the unemployed, state and local government, and anyone else who has been hurt by this pandemic through no fault of their own, until there's at least a vaccine to get us back to normal. The second part of this economic plan is to pass a $2 to $3 trillion infrastructure project to get the almost 12 million people back to work who were employed in February, but are now still unemployed, that 12 million people. And an infrastructure project is expected to employ 7 to 10 million people all over the United States. So how will all this affect the economy and the stock market? Well, about 6 months ago, I wrote in a market commentary that Goldman Sachs predicted that the market would go up by about 3% if Biden won. And I guess they were right. I do expect the market to do well between now and the end of the year. Mitch McConnell has at least stated in the last week that he is now open to a stimulus package. Surprisingly, he also stated he was open to helping local and state governments, which really need the money, or they're going to have to start laying off policemen, firemen, and EMT workers. But that was a sticking point in previous negotiations. We'll see on this. I somehow think nothing may happen until after the Georgia Senate runoffs. This past week or so, Pfizer and Moderna have announced that their new vaccines are 90 to 95% effective and will be available for some by the end of this year and for most of the rest of us early next year. Most epidemiologists that I've talked to do not believe we will be able to vaccinate 60% of the country until the early fall of next year. And until 60% of the country is vaccinated, the economy cannot return to what we remember as normal. So we should also have an announcement, also I wanted to mention this, of several other safe and effective vaccines in the next 2 months. And this will all be good news for the stock market. You know, stock market is forward looking, and you know, we just want to get back to normal, and then we know the U.S. economy and all of us, you know, will be good again. An expected $2 trillion stimulus package, whether it comes before January 20th or after President-elect Biden is inaugurated, when the new Congress convenes. But that $2 trillion stimulus package that's expected, and everyone really wants other than a few people in the Senate. And then also next year's $2 to $3 trillion infrastructure legislation. That money flowing into the economy throughout, you know, that will push the stock market higher throughout 2021 if history is any guide. Since it's unlikely Biden will have control of the Senate, I believe he will be less combative and erratic on trade. Historically, Biden has been a supporter of free trade and free trade agreements, which is good. But that means the Federal Reserve will be playing a larger policy role in fiscal policy. That means lower rates for longer and probably even more quantitative easing until the economy gets back to normal. And this alone will be another boost to the stock market. All these events combined should lift the stock market and restart what is currently looking like a slowing or slower economy. Let me just give you some final thoughts. The overall results of the election were a vote for the moderate center, I believe. Many Republicans hated to see their party drift off the edges into some of these kind of crazy, kooky groups supporting racist militia groups and QAnon conspiracies. I mean, this was never who Republicans were as a party, and I think President Reagan would be rolling over in his grave if he could see some of the stuff that's happened in the not distant past. And for everything that's been said, I think Democrats had a choice in the primaries and the general election between the progressive left and the moderation of most centrist Democrats who don't live in LA, San Francisco, and New York. And the good news is that the entire election turned out to be somewhat triumphant for the moderate middle. I know a lot of people think that Biden is part of the crazy progressive left. I've known him a little bit over the years, and I don't believe that's true, and I don't believe anyone in the progressive left, the Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, they can't stand him, and they don't like any of his policies, his past policies, and they don't believe he's part of the progressive left, which should give most of us, you know, some happiness. We were also anxious about these elections. We were worried about violence, hacking, foreign interference, and voter fraud. And, you know, the election ended up running pretty smoothly, other than President Trump's completely unsubstantiated claims of widespread voter fraud. No one and no other politician, Republican or Democrat, has come up with any credible evidence that there was large-scale misconduct or corruption or voter fraud. You know, every lawsuit he's filed has been dismissed by Republican and Democratic judges. His own Homeland Security Department this week stated in a report a few days ago that this was the fairest election in modern history and there was no widespread voter fraud. In the end, the election yielded up an inherently moderate outcome. Everybody got something. Democrats got the presidency. Republicans got gains in the U.S. House, state houses, and legislatures. And it looks like they will maintain a majority in the U.S. Senate. In the end, it looks like the American people will get a divided government. And for most of us, that's not the worst outcome that we could have. Thank you for watching. Bye.